So The Nun is terrible. Thank you for watching. Several months ago, I went ahead and took the liberty of making over 40 minutes worth of content in order to express my very negative feelings about the two Annabelle films. So I figured since I put so much effort into talking about why I think the Annabelle films are so bad and the Conjuring films are so good, I kind of have to review The Nun now that it's out. I feel like I've locked myself into reviewing every film in the Conjuring universe now. I specifically went to this film with the intention of reviewing it, so when I walked out, I was kind of panicked because I was like, I have no clue what to say about this, because it's just a whole lot of nothing. It's just a bunch of scenes that were put next to each other in order to deliver these really obvious jump scares, which the movie blatantly draws your attention to long before they happen.
Sister, please, this way. Hello.
Similarly to the first Annabelle film, the acting is very flat to the point where it just feels like people are saying exposition at each other. This film has three main characters, the first of which is a priest who the Vatican sends to this abbey in Romania to investigate the suicide of this nun, whose intentions for killing herself are made very clear in the opening sequence of the film, yet we have to wait almost till the end of the film for the characters to figure it out, which is annoying. Next, we have a young nun in training who hasn't taken her final vows yet, who is also psychic. And lastly, we have a French-Canadian man who's the guy who found the dead body in the first place. So a priest, a nun, and a French-Canadian walk into an abbey, because this movie is literally a joke. And for people who are meant to be investigating a situation, they really don't ask questions in a very timely manner at all. There are very obvious problems that any normal person in this situation would comment on out loud immediately. Most notably how unbelievably shitty this abbey looks and how there's blatant satanic imagery just out. You'd think that Father Detective would have an issue with this, but no, he just doesn't bring it up at all and immediately just agrees to sleep there. Meanwhile, the French-Canadian man is being used exclusively for comic relief, which is weird because nothing he says is funny. The way this film gets from one occurrence to another is so unbelievably clumsy that there was a couple parts where I was actually stunned. Nothing any of these characters do makes any sense, including the demon, who's supposed to have the upper hand here, one would assume. Like, there's this really absurd part, oh, spoilers because don't see this, where the priest gets buried alive by the demon and the psychic nun psychically knows that he's buried outside and gets him out, and after he gets out of the grave, he's like, oh boy, we have to figure out what's going on around here, maybe those will have all the answers we need. And it cuts to the grave he was in, and it turns out he was lying on top of a bunch of books with all the information he would ever need about this demon. The fact that somebody wrote this and thought it would be okay frightens me more than any satanic nun imagery ever could. If you wanted your characters to come upon some helpful literature, a cliched horror film library scene would have actually been fine in this film because it takes place in a giant castle that likely has a library. But no, all the books are in a big hole outside. What have you done? So the priest reads the books and he finds out all about Valak, who we already know all about from the trailers and the entire second Conjuring film. So it turns out that Valak has enjoyed dressing as a nun way before haunting the Warrens' house and possessing little English children. Supposedly to mess with these other nuns whose job it is to be in constant prayer because the abbey is concealing a demon portal, turns out. It also turns out that all the nuns are ghosts, so it's just a bunch of ghosts being haunted by a demon because who gives a shit? In The Conjuring 2, the entire reason it looks like a nun is to specifically mess with the Warrens because they're devout Catholics, just like it appears as the Crooked Man to the little boy because it's from his spin-around toy thing. It scares you according to your own personal fears, but who cares? We wanted to make a movie with a bunch of nun imagery, so who needs a decent story? You might be thinking, yeah, but there's no more devout Catholic than a nun, so that's why it appears as a nun to them, so it kind of makes sense. Well, I think what would scare nuns more is an actual demon-y looking demon with like horns and shit. Maybe a hoof? But instead, Valak just goes for more of a bitch stole my look kind of thing here. At this point, I'm surprised that in The Conjuring 2, it didn't just put on one of Lorraine's aggressively 1970s dresses, since it turns out Valak is just an outfit-stealing slut. Oh, and speaking of Lorraine, does it turn out that the psychic nun is actually Lorraine Warren Young, considering she's played by Vera Farmiga's real-life younger sister? No! There's just another Catholic psychic character that looks just like her in this universe. Why did you do this? So they find out that there's a relic of the blood of Christ in the Abbey that they can use to seal away the evil, so they find that in some wall. There's a big struggle where the young nun almost drowns, who's a full nun now, by the way, because she decided to take her final vows before the boss battle. Very good strategy. Anyway, turns out before Valak tried to drown her, she somehow got the blood of Christ into her mouth, and when Valak lifts her out of the water, she does a spit take into the demon's face and seals away the evil. The blood of Christ and a good old-fashioned spit take are not two things I ever expected to see overlap in any film, so I guess I can give it some points for originality because wow. And as it turns out, the French-Canadian guy who's been called Frenchie the whole time is actually Maurice from The Exorcism Ed and Lorraine Warren talk about performing in the first Conjuring film. So apparently, since he didn't touch the blood in the relic like the nun did, he's like infected with part of the demon, so he's a Horcrux, basically. So that's how they connect it to the other films. Not with the young nun, who could have very easily been Lorraine, but with the side character guy. I guess this film really likes referencing William Friedkin's work in really dumb ways to the point where they gave The Nun and The Conjuring a literal French connection. So yeah, all of that ritualistic sealing away of evil was just for nothing, and Valak gets out anyway, which we knew it would, so what was the point of any of this? This film didn't even have the decency to be so bad that it's funny. It just sucks. It represents everything that I can't stand about lazy jump scare bottom of the barrel horror. This film is embarrassing. I give it a none out of 10.